By the time I finished my PhD, the business was already not just in the concept, not just kind of developed, but we were selling. If you keep on going that route, and even if you try to go that route, you would end up learning so much about life, about business, about people, about yourself, about how things are done in the world. You just have to be willing to do it and walk that path.
Welcome to the Academic Adventures podcast. This podcast is all about people who have embraced the opportunity to combine their academic work with entrepreneurial ventures. You'll hear about the highs and lows, balancing responsibilities and grabbing opportunities, plus advice for anyone thinking about following a similar path. Hello there, I'm your host Sarah McLusky, and my academic adventure for this episode is Anton Puzorjov. Anton is the founder of Quas Drinks, a non-alcoholic fermented drinks brand that he set up in 2021 whilst completing a PhD in synthetic biology at the University of Edinburgh. But, as you'll hear, this wasn't Anton's first venture. Inspired by an ex-girlfriend's mum, he had his sights set on following an entrepreneurial path. So during his Masters, he established the University Student Entrepreneurs Society and then won funding to develop One Cherry, a retail app for local charity shops. Around this time, he was also offered a PhD and a place on a mini MBA course. Juggling all of these commitments proved a bit too much, and in the end, despite proof of concept, the app never quite took off, so Anton decided to close One Cherry down and focus on his PhD in biotechnology instead. Despite his current venture being more aligned with his interests, he feels like he hasn't quite found his forever business yet and is planning to walk that path and apply everything that he has learned to bigger and better things. Welcome along to the podcast, Anton. Thanks so much for joining us. Could you tell us a bit about your journey into entrepreneurship, how it all came about?
Yeah, I think I have a little bit untraditional approach to entrepreneurship in general. Like my family background, so I grew up in Estonia to Russian parents. Neither of my parents actually had background or anything to do with business or entrepreneurship. My mom was a tailor, and my dad was working as a manager on an oil terminal. So I never actually had, encountered anyone doing business or what entrepreneurship was. And in my head, I still remember, I thought people that are doing business were people that wear the smart suits with ties and looking very serious, And I had no idea what they're actually doing. So I was never attracted to that. But that was until I met a mom of my ex-girlfriend who happened to be an entrepreneur. And I still remember this moment when we were driving in a car, and I saw her kind of just being herself, and herself at the time was managing business, managing life, 3 kids, and she was driving this really nice car, and she was talking with this client in a different country about business, and she was at the same time on the phone with someone else trying to handle something for her kids. And I was like, and she was like super smart and super sharp and like super efficient, like really something that I was like, if I wish I could be the same person, I could solve problems fast. I could be like fearless, I could be in charge. That to me sounded very, very attractive. And that was for me a big, big inspiration.
Sounds like a fantastic role model. Yeah. And so what were the next steps that you took?
The interesting story is that I only met my ex's mom about 1 month after I applied to university to study biology. So it was a little bit too late to completely change the degree. But what happened is that at the University of Edinburgh, I applied to study immunology at first. And a few months later, after I actually started my degree, I managed to change from 100% biology to 50% biology, 50% business. So over 4 years at the University of Edinburgh, I ended up studying everything from strategic management to strategic marketing to economics to finance, principles of finance, a little bit of accountancy as well. And that gave me a very nice broad overview of different aspects of business. And I think I was doing it definitely strategically, knowing that at some point I want to run a business.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to understand all aspects of business. And of course, I don't think still I'm not expert in any of those things, but I really understand how they all sort of work together.
Yeah. But you didn't then start a business straight away, though, did you? You went and did a PhD after your degree?
So, yeah, no, I mean, coming from a different country to the UK and studying here in a new place, like it was quite life-changing, to put it slightly. My English seems to be all right now, but trust me, like first 2 years at university, I could barely put a sentence together. And when you don't have a language, like one thing, a big thing I realized is that it doesn't even matter what you know. If you can't communicate it, nobody will ever know that you know anything, So for me, it took me years to just get to the same level as everyone else. It took me time before I could think, okay, maybe I can now think of starting business. So I took it as a challenge to learn all the building blocks, and I wasn't really rushing myself. And after my bachelor's degree, I started a master's in bioinformatics. So I was trying to marry my interest in computer science as well as biology. And in parallel to that, I also started the University of Edinburgh Entrepreneurial Society. And that for me was the first sort of, I would say, proper business experience where I took an idea of let's unite students that are passionate about entrepreneurship and let's give them environment and community so that we could learn from each other and we could help each other out and we could find co-founders and we could attend events together and grow together and create something new and solve problems and make a world a better place for entrepreneurship. And that was my first proper experience of taking this idea. And at the time I didn't have any experience in being in a society, let alone being in the committee of a society at the university or anything. I was like, well, this is something that I believe needs to exist. I have no idea how to get it done, but let's just jump off the plane and try to build a parachute or a rocket while you're flying down, and
I think that's
learn
good practice for entrepreneurship, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, 100%. Because you will never know everything you might need on this journey. You just have to adapt and learn quickly enough. So getting that society off the ground was a crazy experience, and just trying to communicate and align people to follow the same goal, the same direction, and picking people, trying to understand how do you work with people, how do you find the right fit? How do you align them? How do you lead them? Like, how do you separate different responsibilities and grow that whole thing together? So, and that society was a fantastic learning experience from nothing to the fastest growing society at the University of Edinburgh in 2016, 2017. And for me, that was a testament when I passed it on to the new committee at the end of my master's degree. And the society still exists, and which I'm very, very proud of and happy about. And when I finished that, passed over the society reins to someone else, for me, that was a testament. Well, I took something that I had an idea about, and I turned it into something that now exists, lives and breathes, and has people around it, and delivered value, and like now is in real material world, So I thought, look, if I can do that, I can probably start a business as well.
Yeah.
So a few months later, I was taking part in this climate. I think it was Climate Launchpad. That was the thing. Climate Launchpad program in 2017, and they were sort of looking for business ideas that could help climate impact. And that was the time when, with a couple of friends of mine, we came up with this idea of creating an online marketplace for secondhand shops and charity shops, so that we could help them to move online and start getting clients from online. And at the same time, the idea was to help people that want to be more sustainable and trying to do something against the fast fashion concept, and to help them to make the shopping experience with secondhand clothes much more convenient and comfortable and quicker by browsing local items in your local charity shops online. So That was the idea.
I can see why that would be a very useful thing. So what was the story then? What happened next?
Yeah, so that was, the concept was brilliant, and I still think, so every time I share it, people think, oh, that's fantastic, I would totally use it. Yeah, and that was my first experience of actually building something from scratch. And from that idea, over the next 12 months, I gathered a whole brand new team from scratch, because people that I was working came up with that idea with. One of them graduated immediately, the other person moved to a different country, so I was on my own. I went to a charity shop, I volunteered myself, I thought I ticked the boxes in terms of, I think it could work. I talked to people, I did market research, I found a new team of people that, had shared this vision and passion behind the project and wanted to help and also learn alongside me. And over the next 4 or 5 months, we built the first prototype, and we had a trial for about 4 days with one of the charity shops on Nicholson Street in Edinburgh. And that was a great success, I thought at the time. It all worked. And I remember I was kind of biologist, and I ended up creating with a couple of friends of mine this first application from scratch. Like 80% of the code I still wrote myself. Yeah. And that was a crazy, crazy experience just to getting something like this off the ground. And that was a proof of concept. We got the data, and then we used that data and sort of initial traction to apply for probably about a dozen or 2 dozens of startup competitions that are available to all students or people living in the UK, and some of them available to Scottish students or Scottish universities. And this is where we got the initial sort of money, and then we used these resources to build a proper working application that was actually built by computer scientists, not by biologists, and it was actually working properly. And then 12 months from since I had an idea, 12 months later, we launched a proper application. And then for the next 12 months, we've been running a trial with 4 shops in Edinburgh, collecting data, trying to understand, what works, what doesn't, or what didn't at the time, and trying to fix it and trying to, make it work, basically. But and so I started working on this idea sort of last 3 months before finishing my master's degree. And immediately after my master's, it was a really tricky time, because I got a full-time offer to do a PhD with the supervisor, Alistair McCormick, at the University of Edinburgh, and I really, really wanted to do that, because that aligned with my kind of long-term goals. At the same time, I was accepted to the mini fast-track MBA program in London.
Oh, goodness,
It was called New Entrepreneurs Foundation, and I also started working on this startup idea. I was like, what should I do, right? And for the first year, I ended up doing full-time PhD, full-time business, where at the peak of this idea, I ended up having a team of 11 people, and 3 people were actually working full-time for me and getting salary from the grants that we got. And other people were sort of students and volunteers that were just passionate and wanted to help one way or another. And then I was doing full-time PhD, and guess what? That's the first time doing your first year of PhD, you have no idea what you're doing. And as you're building a business, you also don't know what you're doing. And building a business as a founder is like 24/7 job. You don't switch off. And being a PhD student is also 24/7 job. You can't just, at least in my case, I couldn't just do it 9 to 5 and just go back home and just think about something else. It doesn't work that way. So most of the days during my first year of my PhD, I had 3 screens in my office, PhD office, and on one of those screens, I was creating constructs, DNA constructs that would go into the bacteria in order to do the transformation and express this highly valuable blue pigment from cyanobacteria, which is completely irrelevant to everything else. On the second screen, I would be sending emails to potential charity shops, trying to set up meetings with the managers, regional managers, and trying to pitch them the idea, the vision, how the retail is changing. And then on the third screen, I would have all the code base of the app, because the development team was still very, very small. So the developer was building the stuff, but I was fixing all the bugs, and I was trying to, do my bit so the things would move faster. And also, this is the sort of PhD office, but I also was doing this online fast track MBA in London.
Goodness me.
Twice a month for 10 months, I was commuting to London on Fridays for full-time workshops for full day. And the most interesting part is I was doing this on Megabus.
Oh no!
Not even broke.
The train.
I was broke. So over 10 months of that mini MBA fast track MBA program, I counted over 500 hours on Megabus back and forth overnight.
That's the kind of thing you can only do when you're young, I think.
I swear, this is what I enjoy about entrepreneurship and just kind of pushing myself, is that I end up doing things that you look back at and you think, oh my God, how the hell did I even do that?
Yeah.
I'm just talking about all these things, and if someone told me that this is what they're doing, I'm like, man, are you crazy or something? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this to yourself? But that's the reality of building a business. Especially, I guess, when you're young, you gotta be quite crazy especially if you're combining it with your job, with the family, other commitments, or the university. All of those things take so much time.
Yeah. But you managed to get through anyway to some degree. So you finished your PhD. Did you finish the MBA as well?
Yeah, so I finished the MBA. That was kind of the easy part. I almost got kicked out during from a PhD, actually 4 times in total.
Oh dear.
Which is a completely separate story. But I managed to squeeze through the first year, because this is the first year is the critical year when you have to prove that you're worthy to continue. So I was on the edge of being kicked out, but I'm very fortunate people kind of believed in me.
So what happened with the business then?
So we launched from the beginning to the first 12 months later, we launched the proper product. For the next 12 months, we've been trialing with 4 charity shops in Edinburgh. And that was already my second year of my PhD, right? Yeah. And during that year, everything this wasn't working, and that wasn't working, and that wasn't working. And which is a normal thing for a startup. You just had to figure out how to make it work. And I was trying to figure this out. I started reading a bunch of books, and I still remember it was in December, so 1.5 years into the business, I picked up Lean Startup book, and I started reading it, and I was going through it, and I was like, oh my God, I think I've done everything wrong.
Oh,
just everything. And this is, so I think I was about 25 years old or something, and I'd never been a big reader of books. I thought, back at school, literature is just a kind of traditional literature. I thought it was a waste of time. But this time I picked up this book that people told me 20 times to read it, but nobody emphasized that if you don't read it, you're going to fail your business 500%.
No.
I wish I had that person that would just tell me look, whether you want it or not, you're not the smartest person. There are the thousands and millions of people smarter than you lived before. Many of them just put it on paper, put it into book, just read the bloody book. Help yourself. It's very, very simple. Just help yourself. And I started reading the book. I read it, and I was like, oh my God, I've done everything wrong. And I was trying to fix it, and I realized that there were lots of misalignments. And if I read the book earlier, I should not have gotten as far as I did with that business, because the fundamental blocks were missing, unfortunately. And 12 months after the trial, and after realizing that, okay, the vision that I had, which was to allow people to find anything from local charity shops online and buy it online to then pick up and collect, that vision was not viable. Okay. And that was absolutely fine, because again, I was a startup. Otherwise, I wouldn't be a startup. It had the risk. And we, through data, and by actually doing this, we found out that vision was not viable. That's okay. we also learned a whole lot about kind of secondhand retail, about the apps, about the user experience, about how things work in charities, in charity shops, how charities operate in general. Like lots of this secondary knowledge that you wouldn't think would be useful, but it's actually extremely useful because your initial idea often would would fail, and that's okay, because that's just part of building a startup. But the things that you learn along the way about the industry, the people that you meet, the connections, general business knowledge, all of this will stay with you. So when you actually understand that the initial vision wasn't feasible, it is your job as a founder, as a team, to then understand, okay, what can we do with everything we know about this market, with everything we have built so far, how we can repurpose, or the proper term is how we can pivot using all of this information and put that into something useful. And 2 years into the business, we knew lots of things, we learned a lot of stuff, and we had multiple options to pivot to make this a viable business. But unfortunately, none of those pivoting ideas were close to my passion as an entrepreneur, because I knew that the vision I had in mind was not viable. And I was sharing this with friends, with other entrepreneurs, and I was trying to find courage and strength to just make a decision. What should I do with it? And a friend of mine said, look, Anton, like I knew you for like 4 or 5 years by now, and I don't think you ever mentioned that you wanted to be the charity shop guy. And I was like, I think you might be right. Like I ended up doing this because I saw an opportunity, I saw a problem, and I wanted to do my 2 cents in trying to improve the world, But that was the reason why I kind of went into this, And of course, I wanted to learn as an entrepreneur, and that was a fantastic opportunity for me to learn by doing. And I learned an incredible amount of things. And then I spoke to another entrepreneur. It was actually Vicky Brock, that is now living in. She now lives in Estonia and runs her business from Estonia, which is quite interesting. But I remember I had a coffee with her, and she said, it's very, very hard, but you've got to make that decision. You've got to do something that is best for you. And this is just the beginning of your journey, And yeah, she gave me this courage and believe in myself, and also the ability to understand that, look, I was a business, I did my best, it didn't work out, there are pivoting options, but my long-term vision is to actually run a biotech company. And to do that, I need to have a PhD. So unfortunately, I had to put my one cherry business idea to the freezer. I put in the freezer at the time. I kind of unwind the operations and told the team everything, and everyone was very understanding and kind of. I think, I was very, very fortunate to work with people, and the same charity shop managers that saw the passion and saw the effort, understood that, yes, it didn't work out at the time, but many of them said, look, if you decide to want to give it another go later on, please come back. We will figure something out and we'll find a way to make it work. But that was the point when I finished that business, and for the next 12 months, I focused only on PhD.
Yeah. Oh, it's good that you were able to make that decision and move on, but keeping those relationships intact and not losing sight of your longer term vision. So in terms of that, so you're taking all that learning that you've got from that first experience of running a business, and have you got another business idea on the go now?
So, after I finished that business, I closed it down. That was amazing. Like, I had so much time in my head. It was just incredible. Like, it's like a Titanic on your shoulders that you carry, and then you just put it on the ground, and you feel amazing. So I enjoyed this for about 12 months, and the PhD at the time felt like a walk in the park. But even that was not satisfying me. 12 months later, I was like, I kind of wish back in the game. I just want something burning. I want to be working on something. And that was just after the pandemic sort of hit. There was 2020 summer, and I was looking for the next business idea, sort of again, being very careful, understanding that most things will not go, you need to be strategic and you don't need to jump on the things. But I clearly knew that I wanted to start a business in biotech because it's like, that's my long-term vision. This is where I see myself, and this is where I see the industry growing extremely rapidly. And 12 months after that, closing the first business, I was in Estonia when I was looking at this drink called Quas that is very popular in Eastern Europe. And the important part to mention is that also I had not been drinking alcohol for about 8-9 years by that point. And I always struggled to find, decent non-alcoholic drinks. And I was in Estonia between the pandemics looking at this Quas drink and thinking, that drink is fermented. It's non-alcoholic. I really like the taste. Let me look into this, Let me look into the non-alcoholic drinks market. Maybe there is something. Probably nobody really cares, but maybe there is something. I wasn't expecting to find anything but the evidence that it's a bad idea and it's not going to work. But instead, what I found was that the non-alcoholic market was growing 50% year on year in the UK. And I was like, hold on a minute. So it's not just me who is a bit crazy about not drinking alcohol. The whole movement was just getting started. And that was the first evidence for me that, there might be something in this idea. So I started thinking about, okay, what's the drink, how I could produce it, how the drinks are being made, etc. And the final kind of goal for me was to, while I'm still a student, a PhD student, while I still have access to all the support networks, some grant funding, brilliant, fantastic advisors in the support network at the University of Edinburgh specifically, I could still have a little bit of time. So if I start working on something right now, maybe by the time I finish my PhD and graduate, like in a year and a half, maybe I could have a fully fledged sort of business up and running, so I could switch to running it full time. And that is essentially what happened over the next 1.5 years. By the time I finished my PhD, the business was already not just in the concept, not just kind of developed, but we were selling. And for second business, my goal was to go from idea to revenue generating business, because in the first business, there was no revenue. There was everything, all the projects, all the tech, all the concepts and all the theories, how we would make money one day. All of that was fantastic, but I was like, no, I need to see cash, because if it's not making cash, it's not a business, it's just a project. And by the time I graduated, we already had some sales going, and that's what I've been doing since.
Excellent. Oh, brilliant. And I wonder if this process of going through it sounds a little bit like it's changed your idea of what success means or what it means to run a business.
I think it definitely did. It's, for me, I always thought of those business ideas as an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to take myself and my skills a few steps further and prepare myself, make that work that, people rarely see. And then you work for years and years and years, and then bam, you find something, and it seems like an overnight success. It's never an overnight success. It's years and years of tears and struggle and trying different things. And before I started that One Cherry Marketplace idea, right? I should have mentioned it. Since my first year of an undergrad student, I was attending every single startup workshop, ideas workshop, how to build a business workshop, every single hackathon in the computer sciences department, every single ideas. There was Scottish Institute for Enterprise that was organizing business competitions that you could apply every month with a chance to win like £100 for your idea or something.
Yeah.
And by the time I started that One Cherry Marketplace business, I have failed probably 20 different ideas, maybe more. I was applying with everything, like everything that I had in my mind. Like, oh, let's just throw it into that system,
Yeah.
And I learned how to write those applications in the process. And like, I kind of grew skin of not succeeding, and that's fine. You just gotta do the thing and hope for the best.
Yeah.
And as how did my definition of success change? Yeah, of course. Like from just applying and trying to win £100 to then, let's get a team together, because my goals were changing over my own learning experience with the society. For example, I really needed the proof of concept that I create something out of nothing, and that I really wanted to build that teamwork experience, and I succeeded with that. Next time it was, okay, but how do I register a company?
Yeah.
Okay, I now figured out how to register a company and all the accountancy and all the paperwork and all the IP involved around it. So this is also like, who else would teach me this? I mean, the university is fantastic, giving you kind of the background, but the day-to-day, how to run a business, how to manage all those hundreds of different little things, like you got to figure this out yourself, unless you have a fantastic team from the start and a couple of millions in your pocket to pay people to do that for you. I didn't have that. So I had to learn it. So every time I would, along my, I think 12 years of entrepreneurial learning, I was moving that point of what success meant for me, and with the last business, success meant actually making money,
Yeah.
And now I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, I can take an idea from nothing into something. I can take an idea from nothing into a business, revenue generating business. But now I'm looking at the current business I have and I'm realizing, well, if I want to build £1 billion business valuation, that's not enough. You gotta start with the right, in the right industry at the right time, in the right market with the right team, and what I've done with the current company, with this drinks company, I learned a ton again, but I don't think it's the right vehicle to get me to that $1 billion
So you've
business.
still not found your forever business yet?
I don't think so. No. I think it's, I think from my experience, and the PhD and this university experience and my previous life as a semi-professional athlete, because I was doing track and field in Estonia when I was still a kid for 11 years. And what that taught me was the process of continual improvement, always, step by step. This is how it works. And I think in business, for me, it's a marathon. It's a continuous improvement. It's just a stepping stone. And I'm constantly looking for the next thing, the next opportunity, and the next skills. I'm always thinking, reflecting what I'm missing to get, first of all, myself and my thinking and my experience and my connections to the level where I could be positioned to take advantage of that opportunity when it comes, when I find that, or it finds me, to start that big business.
Yeah, well, I look forward to seeing where you end up. So one last question for you, which is, what advice would you give to anybody who's considering following a similar path?
Do it. If this is what you want to do, do it. Like, I think entrepreneurship in general is by far the most riskless skill you could obtain to improve yourself. Just think about it, right? Like, as an entrepreneur, you end up doing and trying and learning so many different things. And a lot of those things are very, very transferable to anything else you would end up doing. Even if, a year, maybe a few months into this journey, you would realize you didn't actually want to do it, and that's okay. Entrepreneurship probably is not for everyone, for sure. And if you learn that along the way, that's absolutely fine. But if you keep on going that route, and even if you try to go that route, you would end up learning so much about life, about business, about people, about yourself, about how things are done in the world. Because you just look around. Everything we see right now, from the laptop to the screen to the microphones to the applications, everything was created by people.
Yeah.
That's it. And you have a chance to be one of those people creating something that in the past didn't exist, And I think this is extremely fulfilling to bring something to life that was just an idea. And if it succeeds, fantastic. Like, you just have to be willing to do it and walk that path.
I think that's a fantastic place to close our conversation. So thank you so much, Anton, for coming along and sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope I've inspired a few, or at least someone had a laugh or a thought that what a crazy guy living a crazy life. Thank you so much for having me, Sarah.
If you've been inspired by this podcast, head over to our LinkedIn page and tell us about your biggest takeaways. You'll find a link in the show notes or just search for Academic Adventures Podcast. This podcast is a collaboration between the University of the West of Scotland, Converge and Sarah McLusky. The podcast team includes Orla Kelly, Adam Kosterka, Jen Black and me, Sarah McLusky. The Academic Adventures podcast is proudly supported by the Scottish Ecosystem Fund 2023 to 2024.